Hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Celtic Down Under weekend review. My name's Anthony McGuire, and as always, I'm joined by Paul Massey as we dissect Aberdeen 1, Celtic 1, 2 points dropped to Pittodrie, as according to Brendan Rodgers. Paul, before we get chatting about the football, how was your weekend?
Well, apart from that bit, it was a pretty good weekend. Not too much on. Nice balance of some downtime and a few bits and bobs. Nice things. Weather wasn't too horrific this weekend here. Nice, pleasant, low 30s. Past the 40 odd degrees that we had last week and more to come this week. So yeah, it was a pretty pleasant weekend. Until, of course, Saturday evening our time, where it became less enjoyable.
Yes, there was a wee bit of a damp swib to punctuate the weekend. Caught up with a good friend who may be joining the podcast next week, but we'll keep that one as a wee surprise. So we went to a Fringe show last night, which was very, very good. So that was enjoyable. But yeah, just like I said, it was a nice weekend. Like you said, it wasn't too hot, so it just kind of felt like you could get things done, and you didn't feel like you're about to just explode due to the 40-degree heat. So that was nice. Football, Celtic. I'm clearly in mourning, wearing black. Paul, you say you're thinking of happier times.
Yeah, I just went to the drawer and went, I just think of when I see this top, I don't know, the player that springs to mind is Cameron Carter-Vickers, and we could well do with him at the time at the moment, and yeah, happy memories from the season this kit was worn. So yeah, that's why I went for it. Obviously, black is in keeping with a bit of a morning position, so that's valid too. But yeah, I was just and probably a bit slimming, and I've still got a bit of Christmas New Year weight to shed, so that's probably a reason too.
So the dry January / February is doing well, Paul? Not so much.
I did 3 weeks. It was always planned 3 weeks, just under 3 weeks. Then I had a wedding.
Fair.
But yeah, fairly off the wagon since then. So yeah, the less said about
Hi,
that, let's
Pam.
move on to
Hi, Pam. Good to have you on board again. And where in the US are you? I assumed you were in Scotland, but there you go. You make assumptions, and it makes an ass out of me. All right, let's talk about the game. Again, it kind of had shades of Ross County the week before. Dominant first half display. Aberdeen didn't get a touch inside our box for the whole half. Joe Hart had nothing to do except play sweeper a couple of times. We created some gilt-edged chances, probably not as many as I still would have liked for the amount of possession and the amount of threat that we had around the edge of their box. But in no way did I see anything other than 3 points to Celtic. All right, nothing each at halftime. All right, regroup. Chances will come. We'll get a goal. And, here we go. This cliche, game of two halves. We said it against Kilmarnock, said it against Ross County, and here we are saying it again. And Aberdeen found a gear. And they took the game to us. The game stretched. They pressed us. We couldn't really handle it terribly well. And I thought, all right, they scored. Their only real chance of the game. Well, up until that point, their only chance of the game. Miofsky, brilliant. Kills me that we didn't make an offer for him because that was some goal. We'll touch on that obviously as the show goes on. And I'm sitting there going, well, the game's opening up. Our biggest problem this season has been trying to break teams down. So if they're coming at us and they're having a go at us, fair play, they came out of nowhere because that first half, you just couldn't see that second half performance coming. We just couldn't get control of the game, couldn't get on the ball, couldn't play our natural game, and didn't really create any real chances in the second half of note. I mean, obviously we get the equaliser. I think Matt O'Reilly hits the post. But realistically, we weren't as if we were spurning heaps of chances in the second half because the game had been end to end and it was cutthroat. It was really very, very disjointed, and that for me was probably the biggest, again, the biggest disappointment. And that was the Kilmarnock game. It's the same thing. That lack of just somebody willing to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, and it just didn't seem to be anybody in that second half who was willing to do it. And ultimately, we get away with the point, which is probably fortunate. Joe Hart with some excellent saves, really. Yeah, and another day it could have been even worse. But Brendan Rodgers in his post match, first thing he said, it was 2 points dropped, and I have to agree. We've pooed the bed, and we're only 1 out of 4 away games this month. So it's not a great way to start an away run by dropping points early doors. Paul, try not to be a sea of negativity here, but it just, Anthony Haggerty said in his article on the weekend, he said Celtic have only been consistent at one thing this season, and that's been inconsistent. And I find it really hard to disagree with that assessment. But what was your take?
It's valid. I think generally we lacked composure. We were imbalanced, and I'll come on to more specifics on why why specifically we were imbalanced in terms of particularly the left side. But generally, we're just not moving the ball quick. I thought we moved the ball reasonably quick in the first half. You sort of got at them, we pinned them back, we created chances. And yeah, I was pretty bullish in the first half. I was like, it's just a matter of time. Obviously we've got the ball in the back of the net. I've got absolutely no idea how it took VAR that long to make a decision when there's 2 of them 1.5 yards to 2 yards offside.
See, I wasn't sure about the rule about that, because
I can only assume that they weren't sure about the rule either, which is worrying, because
he's clearly offside. I mean,
look, regardless of how the rules are written, he's offside when the ball's struck, and then he remains in an offside position and scores from an offside position. So I don't think you can claim that. There's never a claim that that's a second phase of play, and I think that would be the only way you would judge him to be. He's standing in a position where he's active as soon as the ball comes back off the keeper. So if the ball goes straight in and he stood in that position, he's not offside, the goal stands. But as soon as it comes back to him, he's like 2 yards in front of the nearest defender. He's 100% offside. So I've got no idea how that took as long as it is. It's a personal bit of a bugbear that should he have been offside? He's coming in from the wide position. That's just naivety. That's just lack of discipline. If he holds his position, then he's got the run on the defender anyway. So he'd beat the defender to any loose ball. And then he does tuck it away. He still gets there first. He tucks it away. And yeah, we have got the opening goal. So that whole thing was a mix frustrating and disappointing.
Should Abada have scored? Should Abada have scored in the first place?
Well, possibly, but he's still a bit rusty, isn't he? I think he needs one. He needs one to get himself up and running. Look, there's also a suspicion of handball. He obviously chests it down and brings both. He does the thing where he brings both arms into. He could just as easily have ruled it out for that, and you potentially could. To be honest, that's what the Aberdeen keeper and defenders were claiming for. They were claiming for the handball. They weren't claiming for the offside. So they weren't across that necessarily. But I just thought the longer the game, so first half, you're right. All us should have scored, hit the bar, snatched at other chances. Burnaby has a really good chance from close in. He makes an absolute meal of. Bernardo pulls one, he's got no other option but to sort of conjure that up, and he's very close. It's a bit unlucky. O'Reilly leans back on one and just bends one over the top. He had 2 chances second half as well. The one you mentioned, which did hit the post, but we got a corner, so I can only assume the defender got a nick on that as he was sort of shooting and sort of potentially diverted it onto the post. And he had another one which he could have easily curled into the top corner. And again, he let back on that as well. So there weren't as many chances maybe as the Ross County game, but there were plenty. And it only takes us to take one of those relatively early, and momentum should go from there. But as as I said last week, we're mentally fragile. When things don't go our way, we get ragged too easily. And there isn't, even the skipper's not really taking the game by the scruff of the neck anymore. And he's getting dragged into the sort of harem scarum sort of stuff that's going on. And yeah, we're also missing a bunch of key players. Effectively, if you consider that Kyogo is so badly out of form and or badly serviced that he's been completely neutered as a threat, we're basically missing our spine out of the team. We've listened to Hitate's creativity, we're missing Kyogo's goals, and we're missing our best centre back in CCV injured again. So you take those three players, for all intents and purposes, out of being contributing, it's not much wonder we're in a state. But all of that said, we've got more than enough quality, to use Brendan's favourite phrase, regardless of what you think of the additions. We've got more than enough quality to be beating that Aberdeen side. At the minute, we're beating ourselves. We're beating ourselves with like a lack of mental strength, a lack of accuracy in passing. You know, we're ragged. We let the game get stretched. Roger said in his after-match comments, it turned into a basketball game, and that doesn't suit us. We want to control the match. We want to control the possession. But we moved into that sort of ponderous 2, 3, 4 touches per player in the second half, when we did move the ball much more quickly first half, and you can see the difference. It just completely baffles me how we can't just apply the tactics that are clearly have a better outcome when we play at pace and we move the ball at 1 and 2 touches. But yeah, we've seen the story before, and yeah, it's getting a bit repetitive talking about how we sort of stumble when we start games. You know, we used to complain you need to start games well. We've been starting games well, but we haven't then been building on it and going from there. Yeah, I'll sort of leave it there. There's plenty of, I've got plenty of other kind of comments in terms of where I think things are going wrong across the team, but that's a start.
Martin's got a comment here. He said it's not the board's fault, it's not the playing team, it's down to Rodgers and that the players have down tools. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I understand your frustration, Martin, because yeah, it's a head scratcher at the moment, because I think within games you can clearly see a pattern of play that will work for us, and then we revert back to passing it sideways and taking a million touches and slow, ponderous build-up. And that, for me, is the frustration, because the chances we created all came from either a quick pass upfield or a couple of, just basically bypassing one player just to get the ball moving that much faster. So I can sort of I can appreciate frustration. And again, this maelstrom that we were referring to last week, we were still optimistic that we'd maybe bring some players in before the window, and we ended up bringing in just Adam Ida in, and we'll get a touch on him. And I actually think he didn't have a bad game when he came off the bench. I actually thought he had some decent touches. So so he's been a little bit unfairly maligned on the social media space. But obviously, as Celtic supporters, we have to get behind the players that have been signed and the players that are there. And look, there's enough quality there. Again, use that word, to get this done. But Pam's made a point here that when we're yo-yo season, yeah, but this was the one I was trying to highlight, is we don't seem to have that resilience anymore. We seem to be back down rather than step up to pressure. And I think that's a fair point. And again, that was the point I was making before, that's my biggest criticism of this team this season, is that there just seems to be a lack of grit, for want of a better word. Because, we were, the last few seasons, we've been renowned for just scoring those late winners. And, against all odds, even if we haven't been playing well, just finding a way to get a result. And we probably have done that to a certain extent this season. But, again, it was, once we went one each, I think you kind of say that Aberdeen were the team that were probably looking like they're more likely to get a winner. And again, it was some heroics from Joe Hart that kept us kept us in it. So that's that. I guess the one change to the team we probably should have mentioned at the start was obviously Cameron Carter-Vickers making way due to injury. So that brought Mike Narowski back into the starting 11. And it was his long-range pass that actually created that offside goal. So he's got that in his locker. And we actually managed to pick Kyogo out on a run. And look what happened. You know what I mean? Like, again, it's just this overarching frustration around, Kyogo's not performing. He's a shadow of his former self. But I still come back to the point that our service to him is diabolical, and it just doesn't seem to be improving. And there's a statistic here on XG assists for all our wingers. Luis Palma 0.14, Lil Abada 0, Nicholas Kuhn 0. Obviously, Nicholas Kuhn's not got much of a sample size there. Neither is Abada, in fairness. So we're not creating that. And obviously, the one that you could throw into that mix to maybe mix it up a bit would be Daisen Maeda. We've probably had that, a wee bit of luck in the sense that Japan have just been knocked out of the Asian Cup. So we're going to get him back a wee bit earlier than we probably would have anticipated, because Japan had a pretty bang average tournament. They won their games to get through the next stage, but they were no great shakes all through the tournament, for being honest. Paul, this conundrum with Kyogo. I mean, are we at a point now where you've got to consider starting the big guy, like, instead, just change it up a bit? Because we dropped him into the midfield, and I didn't necessarily think that made a massive difference. When the game got ropey, was that really the right decision when you've got Home on the bench? Would that not have been the better shout to bring him on and give you fresh legs? I know. I question this tactic of playing Kyogo. If you play Kyogo, you've got to play Kyogo on the last man. Like, this dropping in thing, I just don't see it being useful to us, especially when it comes a bit of an arm wrestle. You need guys in there willing to dig in, and unfortunately, that's not the wee man's strong suit. Bit to unpack there, mate. So what are your thoughts?
He did have one really good run where he sort of took on a few players, and he committed players, and he opened up, and there's almost a chance created out of that. Equally, he had another opportunity where he got the ball deep and he just smashed it against the player instead of so decision making was a bit haphazard. He'll be hugely frustrated. And why wouldn't he be? Clearly, in pretty much every fan's viewpoint, the best natural striker we've had since Larsson, on the basis of the last two seasons, and players that have played with him for most of that time seem to have forgotten where to play the ball, or are being actively coached to do something different, which is very bizarre. Would I drop him for Hibs? At this point, it's a coin flip for me. He'd had, it's what is it, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever he was on for. He had some nice touches. He didn't have a lot, which is frustrating. He had so I've seen, obviously, the usual negativity because he wasn't the profile that we ideally wanted, saying, he got an assist, more like he was lucky to get out of the way. Well, I actually think he did well there, because Kuhn's and Kuhn's running into it. He's bumping in and out of defenders. He's lucky to retain the ball, but he does, which is fine. And then it comes to it, and you could forgive him in the circumstances. The ball drops at his feet. He's 12 yards out. It would be really natural for him to try and put the laces through it and open his account, or at least, have a crack at it. But he's got the presence of mind to realize that, that's not the best option. And he just shifts his feet and tucks it across. And Kuhn's got a better position to shoot, and he does. And yes, it takes a deflection for the second week in a row. We get a bit of luck on that. But it's a bit of positive play in terms of the wing play. It's a bit of, nous to, sort of make a nice little pass and find a man in a better position, and probably deserved his goal. So that was a decent little bit of an opening interaction. The best touch he had was the cushioned pass into the path of O'Reilly was just class. Like, that ball is fizzed into him, and he's just got one touch, and the weight to take this fizz off it and weighted straight into O'Reilly's feet. It was a really good touch. And O'Reilly should probably do better. Like we said, we talked someone that hits the post on. So as we say, it went for a corner. So you can only presume. I don't think the keeper got anything. So I'm not convinced the defender got anything. But they gave a corner. So in O'Reilly's defense, maybe there's a slight touch at, and that's what takes it on the post. But I think Matt O'Reilly was generally just a bit off it all day. And I know he's set very high standards, but we're going to need him to push on in this last bit of the season. And he can be the difference, between winning a league and not winning a league. And he has carried us for a chunk of this season already. But I just really hope that he hasn't been sort of distracted too much from all the talk. The window's closed now. Almost certainly he will get his move in the summer. We just need him to switch back on. Like I say, he had 2 chances, one either half, where he leant back and he was, just kind of should have tried to pick out the corner, or maybe almost try to be too precise and then just making a meal of it and over the bar. Not going to be too harsh on Matt O'Reilly because, like I say, he's pretty much carried the team. There was a few players off it, but my frustration with what happened after Ida came on isn't with him himself. It's with how we didn't supply him again. So to me, it doesn't really matter whether it's Kyogo looking for balls in the channels or over the top, or it's Ida looking for balls into him, either on his head or in his body to hold up or turn. We're not supplying either striker. So, like, we've got a 6'3" sort of brute, and we never threw in it once for him to try and attack it in a header and challenge centre backs to, in and around the 6-yard box. Zip. Like, what's the point? Like, I don't see the point. It doesn't really matter which striker you play. If you aren't going to provide them with quality service that suits their style, you might as well not play a centre forward because we're never getting it into them in a meaningful way. So yeah, coin toss for me. There's a danger that we get a bit too carried away with the Hibs game and talk about wholesale changes. We're a bit stretched again because of injury and the Asian Cup. There's a few players that can look at that performance and the previous performance and suggest that they might be lucky to play again or start again, but they'll be included because we haven't got the depth just to leave them out entirely. So I'm looking at guys like Bernabe, like Palmer, Abada, although he still needs more time.
Bernardo,
maybe, but
again, I don't think there's no one to replace him with. But what I'm saying is, like, I think his last 2 performances have dipped. Like he's a young player.
They have a bit, but like, there's a lot being asked of him, and again, he's an inch or two away from from a goal that makes the difference as well. So I didn't think he was as far dropped off as some of the others. I think our left side is a shambles, and I was going to touch that earlier, and we're nearly halfway through the show, so I'll do it now.
All right. Well, I'll bring this one in from Maesh, as he's a long-time listener and likes to leave a comment. So we'll just bring this one up here. So problems on the left, Bernardo not enough output compared relative to O'Reilly on the right. Stales and Bernabe getting out of position and sucker punched in transition for the goal. We were lucky to concede one from the left-hand side. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously, we may as well talk about the goal. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, but we may as well address that now while we're thinking about it. So it was Bernabe's slack pass into Palmer. Ball gets coughed up. Bernabe doesn't apply enough counter pressure.
I think it's to O'Reilly.
To O'Reilly, yeah. Ball back out, and then Stales, like, look, somehow we're left on a one-on-one at the back. Don't know how. Narosti's on a booking, so he's obviously got that in the back of his mind. Just turned inside out. And then before we know it, they're 1-0 up. And like I said, up until that point, that was their sole chance of the game. Great striker's goal. I mean, Miovski did everything exactly, took the ball down, carried it, created the space for his shot, buried it. Joe Hart had no chance. CCV's playing. I feel like that would have got snuffed out. I thought Liam Stales had a good game. I actually thought that he won all his headers. He was pretty solid. But for that one moment, I'm sort of saying to myself, why have you left him one-on-one? Why are we one-on-one in that situation? And he's tracking back, but he's at too much distance to make. He's never going to make it back in time. So that for me was just like, it's just a killer. And it's just like, now we have to find 2 goals. And it's like at that point, I'm starting thinking it's going to be like 1-0. It's going to be like pretty scrape it in. And then, this happens, and it's like, do we have 2 goals in us? And then that's when you start thinking, you don't know if we do. Like, we just seem to be struggling to find the back of the net. So, Paul, Bernabé, I mean, that's 2 games now. Positionally, I don't think he has it. Is there any redeeming qualities there? Is there a player there? Or do we have to just cut our losses and start playing someone else?
He's not a left back. Like we've talked about this, he's not a left back. He had a decent first half because he wasn't asked to defend. He got forward, he played wide, he got in the midfield. He slipped a really good pass, actually, in like a progressive pass in the channel, middle of the second half, middle of the first half, which is what eventually ends up causing the sort of scramble in the box where Bernardo ends up latching onto it and hits it off the bar. The slide in down the channel to Palma was from Bernabé, and he cuts about 3 players out with a progressive pass of no more than maybe 10-15 yards. But it was a really bit of incisive play. It was good. He finds himself inside the box, he's 7-8 yards out, and sclaffs one. My concern, Martin's right. If you want to call him a winger, we don't need any more. He's certainly not a left back. Positionally, he's all over the shop. He doesn't work hard enough back, and he's joined in that by if with him and Palmer, we're absolutely powder puff defensively on that left hand side, because Bernabé, 5'4" or something, and no body strength, he gets caught out of position. Let's look at the goal and let's pick it apart. Matt O'Reilly, if we're being brutally honest, is probably a bit easily shrugged off that, but it's a poor pass in by Bernabé in the first place. Once he's seen his man lose it, he's all over the shop. He's jogging back. He's not looking anywhere. But Palmer, for me, is one of the most guilty in this. He sort of dances out of the way as the Aberdeen player steps across the ball. At that point, it's a shirt tug, it's a yellow card, and any chance of a breakaway is done and dusted then. We're too soft and we're too nice. We talked about it in Europe. We're not street smart. Other teams are taking advantage and they're being professional. That just grab the shirt, pull him back. It's all over. Yellow card, fine. He doesn't do that. He actually actively hops out of the way of him. He gets the ball away. Scales, you're right. I've seen a lot of praise for Scales, and I've seen a few people criticizing him, and everyone that criticizes him gets shouted down. He's not immune to criticism because he's been playing above his expectation. He positionally is where he's good in the air. He's half decent with his distribution. Positionally, he is suspect, and it's proved it again. He plays the pass into Bernabé, and then he gets caught ball watching. He's sort of creeping up, watching the attack and play, knowing that his mate is on a booking. He leaves him one-on-one with arguably the form striker in the league at the moment. And by the time he realizes, you're right, Narovski's got to come out of position. He's got to come across the wrong side. Scales can't get back to help. All he can do is sort of cover on the other side and hope to block up a pass if he releases a pass instead of scoring. Everybody, like Palmer's jogging back, Bernabé's jogging back. Nobody's busting a gut there. At least Scales is trying to bust a gut. He's just never going to get there because he's so far out of position. And then Narovski's, he's caught between a rock and a hard place because he's already been dragged to the wrong position. He should probably do better. I would expect him to stand him up and hold it up a little bit better. And he gets tangled up and he ends up on his backside. But I get it. He can't commit a tackle because it's, he'd probably be a red anyway because he's last man. But even a light foul, second yellow, and he's on his way.
He actually reminded me of a challenge you put in the second half that probably should have been a second yellow.
Absolutely. So that was later, and he should have. We dodged the bullet there. For 100%, we dodged the bullet, and it's the type of stuff that we talk about inconsistencies all week, week in, week out. That said, there were a few pretty heavy challenges by the Aberdeen players. Worse than the one Rocky got booked for in the first half. That wasn't that bad. It's like it was borderline a yellow card, but there were plenty of others that if that's a yellow card, then so were those. But the one he got off with for me, it's a yellow card all day long. And yeah, he's got off with one there. No real blame for Hart. He can't do too much about it. He's trying to narrow his angles, and he's been beaten by a really good finish. There's obviously frustration that whether it was paper talk or not, there's a logical argument for going into trying to win and take the best talent from other teams in Scotland. Now, they might not have done any. They might have held off as we did with O'Reilly and other people, but I'm sure we have got the budget to just take that decision away from them. And now this might not prove popular, and it certainly wouldn't have proved popular a few weeks ago, but I'm going to say that one of the biggest misses at the moment, CCV is, Rio is, Kyogo's form is, but Daiza Maeda is a massive miss, because whatever you think about his forward play, he's absolutely brilliant defensively, and he's covered for Taylor, and he's covered on the wing, and he would. So there's not a chance that Aberdeen would have had it so easy on that breakaway if that was Maeda that was playing where Palma ended up playing. So I'm looking forward to getting him back, whether Rodgers actually uses him, because he seems to be keen on Palma. But just even having the option of that work rate will be good. Yeah, let's not.
Monty agrees with you, by the way.
Yeah, he's been rather vocal. But yeah, our left side currently is the problem is Burnaby. The big problem is Palma's an issue, but he's hit and miss. We've talked about him. Burnaby is the main issue because he's not a left back. He's poor defensively, and he's all over the shop positionally, and it just weakens and damages everyone. It hurts Scales, it hurts Palma, and it hurts us generally down that side.
All right, hold that thought for a second. So Pam here said, our left side's been weak since Ange's time. How come this was never addressed adequately, obviously by the board and by the recruitment team? Paul and I have made a conscious effort this week not to get bogged down too much in what could have been in the transfer window. We kind of feel like there's a million Celtic podcasts out there that have lamented our rather disastrous transfer window. So we're just trying to focus on the football, the here and the now, the team that is actually here, the squad that's here. So I appreciate everyone's frustrations on that, but we're just trying to tune into the other Celtic Down Under shows. There's another one on a Monday that goes out before us, and one on a Thursday. And those guys will dissect the broader issues as well. But we try and stick for the most part to the analysis of the game on this show where we can. So I guess the question is, obviously, we'll do we spitballing for Hibs midweek. Burnaby, does he lose his spot to Anthony Ralston? Or, do you see maybe a Mitchell Frame maybe coming out of the cold and getting a chance? Or do we change the formation altogether? I can't see that happening myself. But, surely you've got to look at it and say, well, is there a possibility or a way of getting Kyogo and Ida up front? And I mean, actually up front, not Kyogo playing in some pseudo midfield role and actually causing some problems and maybe going three at the back. But I can't see it happening because Rodgers, I feel, is just too rigid in his thinking and his ways. But what's your thoughts? Who do you think will line up at left back on Wednesday?
Well, I'm pretty concerned it'll be Burnaby again. It's generally where I'm at, because I think Mitchell Frame must be injured. I don't believe at a time when we've only Burnaby available in that position and other kids getting places in the squad, Vata and Kelly, I don't believe that if Frame's fit, he's not in the squad. I might be wrong, but I think he's probably carrying some kind of knock, especially for Ralston to be used as the replacement. Ralston's an upgrade on Burnaby, like at left back. He is, only because he knows how to play fullback. He's got limitations at right back, but he's obviously got more limitations at left back. But that tells you everything you know about Burnaby's defending, that Ralston are not that spectacular right back cover, is better left back than him. If we've got to go, I think we've got to go with him unless Frame is available. But he's still not actually played Frame at left back. He got his minutes at sort of left midfield, kind of supporting Taylor to cover. But could
you go Scales at left back and bring Welsh in and play two centre halves?
Not a chance. If So the time to go with Scales at left back was the game just got like the Ross County game. So if you're not willing to go, and obviously Burnaby gets the nod, if you're not willing to go home match against one of the bottom teams, if you're not willing to go Scales then at left back, I don't see when you're going to do that. You're
But
not
to
going
play
to do
devil's advocate there, though, Burnaby is your recognised left back. So if there's ever an opportunity for him to have a go in the team, it would be against Ross County as well, though. So your logic can cut both ways. But now that we're 2 games in and he's been pretty diabolical in both those games.
The thing about Scales is pace and positional. And he's going to be more exposed at left back than he is at centre back because it's pretty rigid to stay there. And like I say, if you're gonna, well, actually, I'll tell you what, not even the Ross County game, the game to have, if you had any notion, I know a lot of fans think Squales is a left back option. I don't, but a lot of fans do. But if you were ever going to test that, forget Ross, do it against Bucky Thistle, and he still didn't do it. So if you're not going to do it against Bucky Thistle, to me, that is not even. It's not even in his thoughts. It's not even a viable possibility, which I don't think it should be. So I think we can, unless there's some sort of utter catastrophe, and we're close to it already, I think there's absolutely zero chance of seeing Scales at left back. So that's why I'm concerned about Burnaby, because if Frame's injured, it's Ralston. It's a straight shootout between Ralston and Burnaby. The Hibs game is worrying because we've got this thing where
Brendan Rodgers has never won at Easter.
He's never won at Easter. He's never won at Easter Road. That I was aware of that stat, but it's come out of the woodwork again in the last few days. We struggled there for years, other than a little bit under Ange, and even then he had the odd game where it didn't go that great. And we always seem to struggle on a winter midweek game. We always seem to end up midweek at them. Remember Bain chucking a couple in the net, a wee while back, and just generally struggling there. So the only upside of that is Hibs are even worse than us at the moment. They are utterly dreadful, but they've got nothing to lose. I wouldn't be making wholesale changes, but I don't think I'd play Burnaby if I could help it. Some people making a case for Vata. I think I don't think you can just chuck him in just because he's somebody different. I think Ida's got more of a shout, to be honest. Like he's probably got more of a shout than Vata. You'd probably make a case. I think Nicholas Kuhn's probably good for a start. Although he said he's played twice in 7 weeks or something, so he's obviously not 100% match fit either. But yeah, I think Easter Road will be harder than it needs to be, just because of where we are and coming off the back of that result. But you need reaction.
Well, I think you've got to start Kuhn. I think Abada. I know he's coming back from a long-term injury, but I don't know who's coaching him at the moment. But this incessant need to cut inside and try and shoot when you've got a defender literally within arm's reach of you. I just don't understand it. I don't understand the tactics. I don't understand the rationale. I don't think his first touch on the weekend was great. I thought it was quite a few times where his first touch was quite poor and it just killed the momentum. And his first thought should be, I'm getting to that touchline. I don't have to necessarily get to the touchline, but I've really been looking for that early ball across. And he never did it. I already did it once the whole match. Every single time he was cutting inside. He was relying on AJ for the overlap. One of the times he'd knocked the ball at the park, couldn't even find him on the overlap at an easy side foot pass. I'm not making him a scapegoat because I think the whole front three plus O'Reilly and Bernardo, I think that five were all subpar. I think none of them played anywhere close to their full potential. But it's the tactics for me. It's like, why are we telling him to do this? I realize that if he can't get the early ball in, yes, turn back and maintain possession. I totally get that. But if we are breaking away, surely the better option is to get the ball out wide and get that early ball in. Because when we do that, we just seem to be so much more dangerous. seem to actually create chances. We get our forward players in positions where they don't have 3 defenders swarming them. They've got a bit more chance to actually get a shot away, do something like actually create a chance of disruption. But yeah, I think the change needs to be there. So I'd maybe go with Kuhn on the right. Palmer, I think, survives only because Maeda's not available at the moment. I'm assuming he won't be back in time for midweek.
He'll be given a week off at least.
Yeah. So I think he retains his position by default. And then Bernabei. Well, I'd maybe go with Anthony Ralston, but that's not an ideal situation either. But I don't think you can persevere with that. So I just don't see enough to suggest that he's learning. It's hard. I understand it's hard. Like he's not really played at all. He's not featured at all. He's not been quoted. He was a period of time he wasn't even getting in the squad, and now he's having to start. And yeah, I get all that, but there's just too much erratic behavior in a Rodgers team that relies on shape and everyone positional sense knowing where they are. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Paul. It just flows into the rest of the defense. So Stales gets dragged out, then Miofsky gets dragged out, and then we're all over the shop. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we make that change as well. So I'd maybe say Ralston and Kroon. I don't think he's going to play 2 up front, so I can't see how Ida's going to start. I mean, he'll probably persevere with Kyogo, but if he did make the change, I don't think anybody would be really crying, saying, "Oh, can't believe we've got Kyogo on the bench." It'd only be a situation where, we're probably scratching our head going, how's it come to this? But, the wee man, he's got his fair share of struggles at the moment. And not so much this week, but last week, I felt his touch was a couple of times where he took a heavy touch. And it's like, I hadn't seen that from him ever since he's been at Celtic. But you're kind of just thinking he's in a wee bit of a rut. And maybe coming off the bench as a sub rather than starting would maybe be a way of just changing it up, just coming on when you're playing against tired legs rather than having to start the game. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but I think for me, a replacement for Bernabei, I think Kuhn for a start. They've been my two changes. I think for Hibs.
I think you're probably right. Like, it's not really much of a wonder that Kyogo's touch is a bit off. He's only touching it a handful of times a game at the moment. There's so little service into him. And look, his touch first touches hasn't always been immense, certainly outside of the box. But he's had enough service inside the box that we haven't really cared about that. He's not a type of player that really quite often gets one chance and scores. He's done it at the odd time. The 2 games against Rangers sort of spring to mind. But there's lots of times where he needs, 2-3 chances to score a goal. So, and the same goes for sort of being your sharpness on the ball in general. If you're not receiving it, just pressure sort of comes on. Abad is a weird one. I agree with you. I get that Rodgers likes wingers to come in off the wing and then cut in and shoot, but Abad is right-footed. So, he's curled a few nice ones in his time with his left, but that's clearly not the strength to his game. And if you do want him to cut in and to take a shot, get him on the left-hand side where he can cut in on his right. I agree with you. That's just a shambles, and I don't understand what's going on. And yeah, we just like I said earlier, and like a couple of comments said, we just look mentally fragile, which is the it's the absolute opposite of where we've been in recent years, and kind of Celtic in general. Celtic teams, the great teams you think about with Celtic, there's plenty of them. It's that kind of great will to win, last minute injury, late goals. There's tons of them we can talk about down the years. And yeah, that we seem to just be a bit weak. And look, there's clearly unrest, deservingly, but I do worry that I worry that unrest sort of feeds itself from the stands and into the players, and that's not benefiting anyone. Like, I think we all want a better outcome in the boardroom, or even severe change in the boardroom, but wherever you stand, I don't think anyone wants the status quo just to sort of carry on as it is. But I do think we need to be the 100% supportive of the players during the 90, 100 minutes, because
They need us.
If we let that, well, yeah, they do need us, and it's a bit of a cliche about a 12th man, but it's absolutely true. What happened in the COVID season, the fan base was missed. Absolutely, the fan base is missed. I still believe that regardless for all the shambles we were that season, if we had full stadiums, I think we'd have won that league, or we certainly been a lot closer. So we've got, as a fan base, we've definitely got a job to do. This we've basically got a mini season of 14 games. And if we can do better than them across those 14 games, we'll win the league again. So it's been a pretty depressing few weeks. We're in window into this kind of result and a poor performance against Ross County. But I think we also need to get this perspective to be had about the team. And then there's a bigger thing to be at play with the board. But as we said, we wanted to try and focus on the team. And we've now got whatever we think of recruitment, and it's bloody awful. This is the squad we've got from now until the end of the season. And I still think there's enough there to win the 2 trophies that are left. But we need to improve pretty significantly on some players, and tactically we need to be quicker and sharper. And we do need to start taking chances. Like, I saw the comment earlier on, 4 on target out of 22. Spot on. Usually, look, I said this to you before we came on air. Match stats very similar to games that we win 3-4, 5-0. 70% possession, 22 shots on goal, way more corners, and a couple more fouls. The foul stat's still a weird one. We have majority of the ball and we still give away more fouls. Can't think what that would be. But yeah, 4 shots on target's lowest. It's usually, even when it's on the lower side, it's on 6 or 7 shots on target. So it's definitely down a wee bit. But it just shows you that, you look at those stats, that could have been any game in the last 8, and some of them we've won convincingly, and some of them we've really struggled. So I think it's less about those stats and more about how we use the ball and how we work as a unit. And I feel like we were pretty disjointed. The game got strung out, it got stretched. They grew in confidence, they pressed quite well second half, and then they realized that we were, in our attempt to chase the game, we were leaving pretty hefty gaps, and they just pinged that diagonal ball into the corners, in behind Johnston, in behind Burnaby, and we were all at sea. And they were picking up loose balls in the channels, in the gaps between the lines, and yeah, you're right. But for the much maligned Joe Hart, it would have been no point. So it's a pretty dreadful performance and result. But I always try and be glass half full. That might be a point that's really, really important come the end of the season. So who knows?
Well, as somebody pointed out, it took a late penalty for Rangers to get a draw at Pittodrie earlier in the season. And admittedly, that was under, Mickey Beale, who's not going terribly well at Sunderland, surprise, but then still managed to create a soundbite that said he'd be honoured to take the Liverpool job.
Take the Liverpool job.
I mean, I was like, the man's just got no shame. Like, no shame. But
I'd be honoured to take the Celtic job if Rodgers wants to step aside.
I'd be honoured on a date with Dua Lipa, but things that are never going to happen. But anyway,
your wife might have something to say about
that. Leave past for one night. What did I say? So, what did I say? Well, Clement, he's 11 wins out of 12. Our best form this season has been 6 games, like winning in a row. That's the best we've managed this season. We're going to have to find, you say 14 games to go, we're going to have to find some form that we probably haven't really had all season to get us over the line here. And I think the players are there. I agree. I think that the players are there, but does Rodgers have enough in him to maybe just tweak it a bit to accept that we need to be a little bit more direct and we're probably being a little bit too ponderous? That is going to, for me, is going to be the big question. And that will be the burning question till the end of the season, is whether he is going to be pragmatic enough to accept that with the squad of players he's got, I think somebody said in the comments that maybe Martin, we're not Barcelona, we're a bit more kick and rush, we're a wee bit more direct. They're the sort of players that Ange had brought in. Brendan Rodgers hasn't sort of redeveloped the squad in this season. That hasn't happened, clearly. So I just think, if we can just find a way of being that little bit more aggressive and just maybe, like I say, just bypassing and taking that one less touch or that one less bypass of a player, I think we'll find we'll start creating the chances again. And then, all right, the final thing is obviously taking them. But I think if we can't keep going the way we are, just creating a couple of good chances in the game, we've really got to start really pounding on the gate again and really making a bit of a statement. And who knows? I mean, it might be against Hibs. You know, you say they're travelling terribly at the moment. I think Mesh said their Australian players will be back, but Australia had a pretty ragged tournament as well at the Asian Cup. Martin Boyle got on the score sheet a couple of times, but apart from that, it wasn't great. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be nervy, and we're going to lose some fingernails, and it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be a canter. Now, I know, Paul, you called it early in the season that we were going to win the league, no problems. But obviously, that was against Michael Beale. They've made a change.
Mourinho abandoned me and made me look a bit daft.
And we've regressed, or at the very least, been very inconsistent. But I guess the question is, do you still feel that we can win the league? Do you think we will win the league?
We definitely can win the league. I don't think that we're beating our nearest rival twice. So on the head-to-head, when it comes down to it, this is the frustrating thing. Rodgers has got the mark over them, but it's these other games that low blocks and games we should win, and I don't know. There's a lot of unrest, and there's a lot of people that are already kind of seem to be chucking the towel in, and even further still, some seem to be almost wanting that because it might lead to some sort of grand change. Now, I'm going to be pretty negative here and say I don't think we're going to see grand change. At the end of the day, Desmond is the puppeteer, and he holds a minority shareholding, but he holds the biggest block of shares, and he's got the support to get a majority there. The weird thing is Law's his man, but so is Rodgers, and they don't see eye to eye, which I think is part of the problem. So we've got a bunch of problems there. I don't see any mass change. Rodgers isn't going to walk. He's on $3.5 million a year, if you believe the stories. Or it's certainly the highest paid manager we've ever got. So he's not going to walk because he doesn't walk away from a fat payout. We're going to have to sack him.
Yeah,
exactly. So we're going to have to sack him. We wouldn't sack Neil Lennon when he was doing a hell of a lot worse than this. So if you think that we're sacking Brendan Rodgers midway through the season, I think you're dreaming. So on that basis, however you feel about things, I feel like we've got to back the team, back the manager, and hope that we get that run of consistency. And if that doesn't lead to the title, then obviously the ramifications and the incriminations will follow, and rightly so. But for me, whilst we're still in the hunt, and let's remember, we are still top. They play Aberdeen in it 24 hours before they play us. That's a good Aberdeen side. Like they should be sitting higher up the table than they are. They've come a cropper partly because of their European endeavours. So they've clearly got good players. They've clearly got some depth. Like, we haven't really touched on this, but they left out probably their best creative midfielder.
Brought him on.
And Leighton Clarkson. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They brought Clarkson off the bench because they wanted to be a bit more solid, and they played Connor Barron next to Shinnie. And so they've got some decent players. They've obviously just announced that Neil Warnock is the manager until the end of the season. Whatever you think of that appointment, it's box office. And who knows? Warnock takes his sides to Ibrox tomorrow. Who knows what happens? There's plenty of twists and turns to go. We just need to get our own house in order, and we need to start putting our own form together, and just playing to our strengths, which is shifting the ball quickly, getting in behind, creating chances. And once they start going in, the confidence will lift. But yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I still hope and expect us to win the title. But like I said last week, it's going to be a lot tighter than it needs to be because we've shot ourselves in the foot with the lack of reinforcements.
All right, I'm ready to run through a few people comment. So thank you everyone for joining us live as we are dissecting the draw on the weekend. Hi, Dad. I think we missed the boat not bringing in Brown. That was sorted out the dressing room. maybe, but Brown is now the manager of AR United, if I'm not mistaken. So congratulations, Bruni, on his next appointment. Hopefully it goes better than his time down south. Martin's saying here that we don't set our standards by the Huns. I agree, Martin, we don't, but we're in a bit of an arm wrestle and we're going to have to be better than them the rest of the season. And then, like I say, we can reassess it in the summer and go again. But at the moment, needs must. Pam's saying here that she's keep the faith. She's had to head off. Thanks, Pam. Thanks for joining us. And Martin here also just sort of stating that, we've let Turnbull go when he's been quite a big goal contributor. Unfortunately, Martin, you're not going to get much sympathy from me or Paul. Turnbull, very frustrating for us personally. I mean, I suppose the only thing there would be, we sold him when we knew Hatate was going to be out for the next 5 to 6 weeks with an injury. But obviously, with Turnbull being on the last 6 months of his contract, it was either get some money now or he goes for nothing. So I suppose you could probably argue the case whether we need the money, but anyway, that's a discussion for another time and another place. Paul, we're fastly running out of time. It's been very enjoyable talking to you about this, even though the result's not been great. I think now we'll probably go to our man of the match, unless there was anything else that you want to bring up from the game that we haven't touched on or anything that we've missed.
Nah, I think we've probably done enough on this one tonight. We can move towards man of the match, which I don't think is that difficult this week. I think there's probably only one or two contenders, but I'm interested to hear. Do you want to hear my two contenders? Three contenders.
I tell you what, you give me your contenders, and I'll tell you who I've picked. Go for
it. So my contenders are Nicholas Kuhn.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Ida,
mm-hmm.
and Joe Hart.
Yeah, I picked Joe Hart.
So do I. I just try to give a little bit. I
struggle to give it to a substitute who's only on for like 20 minutes or whatever. But Trim was on for a bit longer than that. But I thought Joe Hart.
If Matt O'Reilly tucks away the one that Ida lays off, Ida probably gets man of the match. 2 assists.
That's fair.
We win the match and 2 assists. He maybe gets it, but
it's a different podcast then.
Joe Hart. Well, yeah, it's probably more enjoyable for the us and the viewers and listeners. Hart basically, like I said, Hart keeps us in the game. So for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. It's Joe Hart.
And and the fact that he had literally nothing to do, and then all of a sudden it has to spring into action. So you always you can appreciate that skill, because it is a skill to be sort of alert for the whole 90 odd minutes of a game. Paul, musical recommendations. What have you got for us this week?
Yeah, so I have got some Scottish homegrown talent this week. So anyone that's Scottish on here probably has heard of this guy, but I would doubt if the Australian contingent and wherever else you are on the globe, he's probably not made that much of a dent yet. It's a guy called Dylan John Thomas. His debut album and eponymous debut album, so just Dylan John Thomas. He's a young Glaswegian kid who's been on the circuit since about 2018, 2019. First single released in 19. He's kind of a bit of a kind of one man and a guitar. If anyone that knows Jeremy Cinnamon, he's kind of out of that sort of stable, bit folky, bit indie, bit buskerish almost. But yeah, taking that to another level. His live shows, much like Jerry Cinnamon, have been apparently awesome, and the album sort of does a reasonably good job of capturing that. So yeah, if you like the kind of stuff that Jerry Cinnamon does, then Dylan John Thomas is well worth a look. Debut album out this week.
I'm on my journey to watch acclaimed movies that I've never seen before. So on the weekend on SBS On Demand, so it's a free one if you're in Australia at the moment. Glengarry Glen Ross.
Good movie.
I was very enjoyable. Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, brilliant performance. Ed Harris, Kevin Spacey, and there was Alec Baldwin has like a 2-minute appearance in it, but very much just it's based on a play. Just the dialogue is just very, very on the edge of your seat for the whole 90 odd minutes.
Is Alan Arkin in it? Is Alan Arkin
He's
in it as well?
Alan Arkin's in it as well, yeah.
It's a brilliant cast.
It's
brilliant
what
cast.
was the thing was like Pacino was hardly in it to start with, and you're thinking like, what's he doing? And then like he basically gets the second half of the movie, and yeah, brilliant. But yeah, really enjoyed it. So
always be closing. Honestly,
so, yes.
If you obviously you're in a more I don't know what I want to say here.
Ethical environment.
I was going to say a more worthy, community worthy, certainly industry. But if you spend any time in sales and service, movies like that are a bit near the knuckle, to be honest. We've all seen sort of training videos and heard chat like, yeah, the ABC of sales, always be closing. Yeah,
my wife was certainly
having a bit triggering. It's a bit triggering.
She was a wee bit triggered on the couch, but anyway, it was, as I said, so if you're in Australia, you can watch that free on SBS On Demand. Another thing was I listened to the Hottest 100 of 20 years ago, so this was on Triple J, so it's a popular vote every year for the best songs, and this was 20 years ago, and I listened to the top 30 of that, and I knew 28 of the 30 songs as soon as the tune started playing, so I thought that's not bad going. So that was a wee trip down memory lane, because that was my musical peak. I've kind of plateaued, not quite up to the same level as Paul these days, but back in the day. And the winner 20 years ago was Jet, Am I Going to Be Your Girl? So there you go. Just before we wrap up, Maesh should say Heart by a Country Mile. Yeah, we've got a clean sweep here this week on that one. Again, guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, like this episode, and also just follow us on all the social medias down below so you can see what we're getting up to during the week. We are one of 3 podcasts that go every week, Celtic Down Under. We've got the Pot Noodle that goes out a couple of hours prior to us on a Monday, talking all things Celtic, nice and broad. And then another show, obviously us tonight, and then another show on Thursday that sort of does a bit of a prelude to the weekend and any mid-week action. Paul, Arthur Taylor's leaving us with a wee bit of optimism here. He's saying the mighty Tick will win the league this season and many more. Hail, hail. I think that's, I think that's good words to sort of finish with. Martin saying hail, hail. And then Jim's just left it here with sack the board. All right, well, we'll leave it too much of a high, but it's been great chatting to you, Paul. And we'll be back again next week. And all that's left to say is hail, hail.
Hail, hail.